Peter Moore was my guest the other day. I really enjoyed him. He's an editor, a cartoonist, a humorist, a writer. Very interesting guy, living in Colorado, Fort Collins. If you've ever read the Colorado Sun or tuned into NPR, you've probably enjoyed his witty cartoons and insightful commentary, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. Peter is a true Renaissance man. He kicked off Nature RX, which is a cannabis health magazine. He's also behind not one, not two, but 3 New York Times bestsellers. Did I mention he has over 10,000 weekly subscribers on Substack? And in the spirit of our show, of leaving you wanting more, I have a little fun fact for you. Peter has been known to sniff tea bags. Yep, you heard that right. Curious to know more? You'll have to stick around and enjoy the ride with Peter Moore on today's show. Hello, my brother. How you doing?
I'm doing great, thanks. How about you?
Good. I didn't see you in the room. Have you been in here for a while?
Just waiting all by my lonesome.
1,000 apologies.
It's been a full 6 minutes now that I've been waiting.
Oh my gosh, because, I'm looking at the screen here. I've been in here for 15 minutes. Go, where the heck is Peter?
I wouldn't miss this.
I'm thinking like this whole Rocky Mountain High thing has really gotten to you here.
Or it's just, let's blame technology. It's simpler.
Oh, absolutely. Speaking of Rocky Mountain High, you did write for a cannabis magazine in the past.
I was the editor-in-chief. I had a friend who worked at Outside Inc., the company that publishes Backpacker and Outside Magazine. And, just when cannabis was really taking off in Colorado, he had the bright idea to launch a magazine about cannabis and health. Obviously, many major health implications that come from cannabis use. And not just stress relief, but other things too. So we got together and launched the magazine, and all signs were very promising that we had a hit on our hands. Of course, I was the editor of Men's Health magazine for a while, so I was used to editing health magazines, and I was personally benefiting from, the change in my life that came about when I moved to Colorado and cannabis was everywhere. But then this pesky pandemic came around. I don't know if you were aware of it, but a lot of
What's
things.
that? I'm not quite sure.
It was called COVID, and it made a lot of us really sick and dead. That was also another bad thing about it. But anyway, it also killed off the magazine I was the editor of. It was called Nature RX, meaning that we were going to get our prescription drugs from nature and and cannabinoids. And it was a very cool idea. I'm glad I did it, and then it died. But that freed me up to move on to other things.
I suppose that you can't really start writing for a cannabis magazine unless you have a little bit prior experience.
Well, part of what was genius about my friend asking me to edit the magazine was that I was a relative newbie with cannabis, which meant that I was exploring it the way a lot of people were, trying to figure it out. It's a super complicated plant and group of drugs. So, I had a great time both, experimenting to figure it out, but also talking to some of the big brain geniuses in the cannabis world, attending a lot of scientific meetings and big trade shows that happened in Denver. So I was learning a lot and transferring that right over into the magazine when I was working on it. And even though the magazine died, cannabis remains an important thing to me. I never use it recreationally. That's not my thing. But basically, my older son was born 35 years ago now, and I had trouble sleeping ever since he was born. So that's about 35 years worth. But it's one of the things that cannabis is great for, is gentling you down when you need to be gentled, and and that's what I use it for. At bedtime, during the night, if I wake up and my mind is going a million miles a minute, that's when cannabis slows me down, eases me back into sleep. So I've been, I believe, a healthier man since I moved to Colorado and started finding how cannabis works for me.
Oh, that sounds fantastic. As far as slowing down, doesn't it depend upon the strain as to which one is going to help you get up or be able to relax?
As I just mentioned, uh, cannabis is an incredibly complicated plant, and I think they've identified at last count they've identified 150 cannabinoids that are um, chemicals in the cannabis plant, and each of us has a very individual reaction to them. So for me, it took quite a lot of experimentation to figure out which ones were working best for me for the purposes that I need them. But just because it works for me doesn't mean it's going to work for you or anybody else. You really need to experiment, find, identify how you want to use it and how that's going to work for you. And I was able to do that. And I am super grateful to that plant.
Oh, yeah, as you should be. Now, you're working as a columnist and cartoonist for the Colorado Sun, is that correct?
Yeah, exactly. That was one of the great things that happened for me after Nature RX died. Um, there's basically nothing going on in the publishing industry at that time. Books were dead, magazines were dying left and right. All of my major, outlets for publication, they stopped giving me assignments. Um, so, so I launched into writing a memoir that I was then augmenting. I've always been a artistic guy. I've always enjoyed that sort of thing. But what I did was I transferred my interest in. I've always been a fan of Charles Dickens novels, and they have those amazing illustrations that lead off every chapter, a frontispiece they're called. And I thought, well, wouldn't it be fun if I started dropping drawings into this memoir that I'd written? And pretty soon that aspect of my life just took off. And mind you, I'd been working in the magazine industry for 30 years as a writer and as an editor, and nobody had ever asked me to do anything with my artwork. But once I started exploring how my artwork could augment and comment on the narrative that I was writing, I realized that I had a real potential as a double threat because there are a lot of people who can write and there are certain people who can draw, but not a lot of writers are artists too. The whole graphic novel revolution notwithstanding, it's a dual skill set that I'm lucky enough to possess. I was amazed at the response to my work, both on my personal Substack, petermoore.substack.com, but also among the editors I was approaching. And that's when I pitched the Colorado Sun, and I said, you know, Coloradans do a lot of like hysterically funny stuff. We're a group that can be made fun of very nicely. And in fact, Colorado Sun, you need me to do that to make fun of Coloradans on your behalf. And amazingly enough, they accepted my offer. And I've been working with them for a couple of years now on various antic aspects of life in Colorado. But when I started doing that, then Front Range NPR gave me a call too, and they said, "Hey, you should be doing that for us." And I said, "Well, I can do animations as well for your website." So now I've been doing commentaries on NPR and animations to go with them. And all of this is a huge career surprise for me and has been so much fun. It's like, as the expression goes, it's the most fun you can have with your pants on.
Peter, I love your cartoons and your drawings. They're just fantastic. And I just have to tell you a little personal story. My wife, Lynn, loves Jim Davis, the guy who did Garfield.
Yeah.
And he's been her idol for as far as cartoonist for the longest time. But I think he might be dropping out because she sent him a letter asking for an autograph or something. He never responded. So
Oh.
you could probably get into her good graces if you were to do a little something for Lynn, because then you could be her favorite cartoonist, and you just never know the handful of people she knows will elevate your career that much more.
And her name is Lynn, did you say?
Lynn, it's Lin, so don't mix it up with the typical Lynn spelling.
Okay. I will send her a drawing and sign it, and then we'll see where the karma brings me after we do that.
That'll be amazing. That will be amazing. Peter, I know that you're a coffee addict, and you wrote something hilarious called Coffee is Woke a while back, and I just loved that piece. Could you tell us a little bit about your addiction and also a little bit behind that story?
It's funny how I never drank coffee at all when I was in college, when like I really needed to stay awake to get my work done. What I did in college, I think this is the first time I've ever admitted this to anyone. What I used to do was I would steal a tea bag from the cafeteria at the college I went to, and I would actually sniff a tea bag in the middle of the night to inhale the caffeine. But then soon after I graduated from college, I moved to Paris. I was studying French over there, and um, I was always a tea drinker before I got to Paris, but then tea cost about twice as much in the cafes as coffee did. So I thought, okay, I'll choke this stuff down. Pretty soon, I was a cafe addict in Paris, which is among the best places you can go to sit and drink a cup of coffee.
Oh yeah.
And I've been drinking ever since. The genesis of the piece you're talking about, which I published on my Substack, I was just staring into a latte that I had bought one day and noticing the beautiful pine tree pattern that the barista had put in there for me. And I thought, hey, there would be something funny about changing up the patterns that are actually in the coffee design. So then I came up with a bunch of messages that I thought it'd be funny if a barista put into a cup of coffee. And I'm glad you were amused. When the cartoons are working, they make me laugh too.
Oh yeah. So the coffee is woke thing has carried through to now. You make your own coffee at home with the designs in it like a barista does?
I don't do that, but I do have one of those little stovetop espresso makers. So I'm an early riser, so I'll be sipping my coffee at 5:30 in the morning, and that's about the happiest I am. I'm generally a happy guy, but the whole idea of it's the first thing in the morning, I'm drinking my coffee, I'm looking out at my backyard. It's a beautiful backyard with the light rising. I have a west facing backyard, so the light is very gentle coming up, and that's just a beautiful feeling in the day when it's beginning. I've got it all ahead of me. I've got my beautiful mug of coffee in hand. It feels like the whole world is out there for me at that moment.
And it is. I'm just having a difficult time, Peter, getting over something you mentioned a moment ago, which was sniffing your tea bag. What's that all about? I don't know if I can get past that.
Yeah, I'm sorry to shock you. It's like a tea bag. It's got that dry tea in it, right? But it's also it's a particulate matter. So when you sniff it, you can actually take in caffeine through your nose. That's like snorting cocaine, except for a much more placid version of that. And in college, I've never been a cocaine user, but sniffing a tea bag was the way that got me through the night and got those English papers done. But yeah, that's a really weird thing. And now the people watching this podcast are the only ones in the world, aside from you and me, who know that I used to do that.
I might have to entitle the podcast as Sniffing Your Teabag or something like that. Now teabag has a whole entirely new meaning.
Well, maybe we should just back off from the whole tea bag idea. It was
Yeah, maybe.
literally a tea bag, not the other kind of tea bag.
Okay, good. Because I didn't know, how much editing was going to be involved with this.
Hey, no aspersions. People who are sniffing the other kind of tea bag, if that's your thing, God bless you.
Who are we to, say they
Exactly.
can't do that?
Exactly.
Just not in our presence. Now, you've also written a lot about travel in your career as well. Tell us a little bit about that and how that fits into what you're doing.
Yeah, like when I was a kid, my dad was one of those guys who just loved to round up the family, throw us in the station wagon, and head off across the country. So we went all over the place when I was a kid, and we were kind of famous in our neighborhood. Like it would get to be April or May, and my little friends would be saying, so where are you going this year? Kathmandu, the moon, and we were, you know, I headed off across the country 3 times with my family. We made it from Connecticut to Wyoming and Yellowstone one year. Then we did Northern California from Connecticut driving, and Southern California and all the national parks in between. And it was a foundational memory for me, having my dad behind the wheel, gesturing broadly at the Grand Canyon. And yeah, I knew that when I became a dad that I wanted that to be part of my life as well and part of their lives. So we had an epic succession of vacations when I was working really hard as the editor of Men's Health magazine. I had a boss who never took vacation, which is an insufferable kind of person to be.
Wow.
Um, but I realized when my kids were about 9 and 7 that I could already feel them gravitating away from me. They had their own lives to lead. Um, but what I wanted to make sure was that for 2 weeks every year, I would join my family and we would do some epic vacation. So we lived in Pennsylvania, but we would spend major quality time. Like we would hole up in a hotel in New York City, and we would all be city kids for a week or two. And my older son ended up as a going to NYU, which I tied directly to the fact that he felt comfortable in New York. He loved New York, and his career, he's a cinematographer, has been based on his comfort level with being in New York City. Other side, my younger son is an engineer. We made many trips out to the West to go to national parks, including the Rocky Mountain National Park. When he was a senior at Bucknell, he interviewed with a company in Denver and moved there for this engineering job that he still has. And he told us that the reason why he did it was because of the vacations we took when he was a kid. So I always feel that I'm living, life 2.0 when I'm on vacation. I've been a crazy traveler for as long as I know. I mentioned, my time in Paris right after I graduated from college. It was foundational for me because it gave me a look at the world in a way that I hadn't been looking at it before. Um, Meeting fascinating people, eating weird foods, weird to me anyway. Um, just seeing landscapes that I wouldn't have seen any other way. And then I'm also a big one on. I always want to have a companion book to read while I'm taking a vacation. So on one of our family trips out west, I was reading Lonesome Dove by Larry McMurtry. Remains one of my favorite novels. But the whole idea of having something going on in literature and you're experiencing it in real life at the same moment is a genius move, and it's among my favorite things to do.
Oh, yeah. Where did you grow up?
In Southern Connecticut, just outside of New York City.
So, what's the transition from Southern Connecticut to now being in Colorado? How long have you been in Colorado?
For about the last 8 years.
8 years. So, what was that transition like for you?
Yeah, so I mentioned that I was the editor of Men's Health magazine, huge magazine, incredibly successful. We had an amazing 15-year run there as, the biggest men's magazine in the world. And then, the internet came along and blew everything. So at the end of 2015, I was laid off from Men's Health, from my august position there. Turns out they could do the magazine without me after all. But at that point, both of our sons were out of the house, not coming back, and my wife and I just started thinking, well, now that we don't have any jobs in Pennsylvania, where would we like to live? So we actually had an amazing time, touring the world, trying to find out where we wanted to be next. So we went to Key West and loved that, except for we didn't want to be trapped down at the end of the Keys when a hurricane came. We spent some time in Nice in France. I was teaching a journalism course there. And we liked France, but it was too far away from our kids. So we moved our way around the world, around the country. And at one point, we spent a month in Boulder, Colorado. And Boulder's a great place, but you have to literally be made out of money to live there.
Yeah.
It helps to be a relative of Bill Gates's if you want to buy a house. But just about that same time, a friend of ours who was in our Tai Chi class back in Allentown, Pennsylvania, announced that she was moving to Fort Collins. And we were like, Fort Collins, question mark. What's going on there? And once you Google Fort Collins, you realize it's top 10 in every possible life consideration you could have. Amazing place for bicycling, amazing place for all kinds of outdoors things. It is the Napa Valley of beer, if you're into that. There are plenty of cannabis dispensaries here, also vital to life. And we came out for a week, and within, I don't know, about 15 minutes of sitting at the crossroads in town at a restaurant and people being friendly to us and just taking in the scene, it was like, this is the place, Fort Collins, Colorado, come on out. This is a destination that, for 20 years while I was living in Pennsylvania, I would come out to Colorado twice a year to backpack and backcountry ski and downhill ski. So between all of those sports, it was like I told my wife, we can save a lot of money by moving to Colorado because I won't be flying here twice a year. And
Right.
I'm not sure whether she bought it, but she was willing to.
And so you've really kind of grown into your mountain man self. You do all the outdoorsy things and you're still hiking and biking and doing all that?
Yeah, I didn't need to grow into it. My dad carried me on his shoulders up Mount Washington in New Hampshire when I was probably 4 years old, and there remain a lot of photos of me looking really super chilly, standing by a trail and crying. But once I got over the crying thing in the mountains, I realized that they call to me in a way. So it was one of the key questions my wife and I asked each other was, hey, are we mountain people or are we beach people? And we each thought about it for about 3 seconds, and we said at the same time, we are mountain people. So, the all of the things that we can do here. I'm a downhill skier. I'm a backcountry skier. I'm a snowshoer. I love to go cross country skiing. I'm a hiker. I was the editor of Backpacker magazine too. That was, essential to who I am. So I feel like Colorado is the epicenter of so many of those things. It's just, there's a bumper sticker I see around town that says, I wasn't born in Colorado, but I got here as soon as I could. That's me.
Are the people quirky there?
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that because I talked about the month that we spent in Boulder when we were prospecting for a new town to live in. And at that time, I was looking around at the men in Boulder who are about 10 years older than I am and thinking, those are the guys who I want to be in 10 years because
Uh,
they were tremendously fit. They were wearing cool shirts. They had on, approach shoes for their rock climbing sessions. And I just thought, I want to be that guy who's living that outdoors life to the fullest. And I want to not have to fly 4 hours to get there. And I have neatly accomplished that here in Fort Collins.
so do you kind of like fit in comfortably to the whole flannel scene?
I practically invented flannel. I went to Bates College, which is 45 minutes up the road from LL Bean. And honest to God, when I was in college, college kids do a lot of crazy stuff when they drink too much beer. My friends and I would drink beer and then drive to LL Bean and buy flannel shirts. So I graduated from college with a lifetime supply.
Better flannel than denim on denim. You know what they call denim on denim? They call
I
it the
do.
Canadian tuxedo.
I have never, to my knowledge, worn a Canadian tuxedo, although I have been, back in the day, I've seen photos of myself with jorts on, and I'm not proud of it.
Right, right, right. Well, now you just let it out to the world.
That and sniffing tea bags. This is, yeah, I just feel compelled to be honest with you, Matthew. You bring it out of me.
You know, my 10 listeners will be happy that you did. So, Peter, on your hands right now, it looks like you're a little bit chilly. Are you wearing gloves of some? That's an interesting look. Tell us about that.
Yeah, it's well, you remember Bob Cratchit in A Christmas Carol when he was sitting in the back room, and Ebenezer Scrooge was punishing him. He had these gloves on too, so he could do his accounting work, which is why I bought them. I work in a barn in my backyard. You can see that's what's around me here. It's a 1904 barn, and this is an insulated room. But when the temperature drops in Colorado, I need a little help. So here I
I
am.
see. Okay, so it's a bit chilly up there.
It is, but that's where we get our snow from, and we need the snow to keep us moist. So and
Right.
keep us skiing. So all good there.
Once again, you hit on something very interesting to me. The word moist was voted as one of the least favorite words in the English language. Did you know that?
Yeah, does that mean that your 10 listeners are going to like click off at that moment when I said moist?
They might dig it, my people.
Yeah. Okay. I think moist in a lot of contexts is a superlative. You know, I'm not going to go into them, but if you let your mind race, moist can be good. It's good in a garden. It's good in the bedroom.
Unless it's a response to someone's cooking when they say, oh, that's moist, or like, that's kind of like, that's interesting. You don't want to hear those things.
Yeah, but chocolate cake has to be moist, right, Matthew?
Yes. Yes, indeed, it does.
Well, I think moist is
Speaking,
much better than dry.
right, right. Now, speaking of, since we kind of transitioned into food momentarily, what have you eaten today so far?
Oh gosh, I just well, so when I was at Men's Health, I co-authored a book about intermittent fasting, which became a New York Times bestseller. Hooray for me!
Excellent. Good
Yeah,
work.
why thank
Touche.
you. Yeah, but um, it also it changed my life when I began intermittent fasting
Yeah,
because so the way that I practice it is I don't eat from dinner one night until lunch the next day, which gets in my 16-hour fast right
sure.
there. And uh, I'm not an expert anymore because I wrote the book probably 10 years ago. Um, but there were so many health benefits associated with fasting, mental mental health aspects, heart health. Obviously, if you do it the right way, you can have some weight loss with it. So I have had very little to eat, and if I faint during this podcast, that would be the reason why.
Well, we'll resuscitate you. So, so you're in the middle of an intermittent fast right now. Is your answer to what have you eaten today, right?
Yeah, but I'm a major chow hound. Don't get me wrong. It's not like I'm like food at arm's length. I love food. I love to cook. I love to eat. I eat everything except for okra, and I'm even thinking about making allowances for that. So it's a major pleasure in my life. And I almost feel like because I confine it to just 8 hours of my day, it's more intense now. It's not like I'm chowing all the time. But when
Right.
I am eating, then it's like, oh, this is a beautiful thing. And so after I put in my day of work here in my barn office, um, yeah, usually I'll do some yoga. And while I'm doing yoga, I should be all zenning out, right? What I'm actually doing is thinking about what I want to make for dinner.
Okay. So, any ideas of what will be tonight?
I haven't done my yoga yet, so I can't tell you. Um, but I will
There
say
goes
that
that mental acuity thing you were talking about.
but it's like once I go quiet and I stop thinking about work, then it's like food begins popping into my brain. And so when I finish up with yoga, it's like my wife is always just poised. She said, okay. She doesn't even have to ask. That's when I say, well, here's what I've been thinking about for dinner. And I don't know if you've have you ever done any like meal in a box delivery services? Have you done that?
I have not.
Yeah. So my son who lives in Brooklyn, the cinematographer, he turned me on to a meal delivery service called Green Chef, and all their stuff is organic, sustainably raised, blah blah blah. But it's also they're really good at saucing and spicing, and they're introducing things that I into my cooking routines that I haven't used much before, like harissa and jus sauce and like all of these really chef's kiss um, spicy adornments for grilled chicken breasts or pasta or whatever. And so about once a month I have a Green Chef delivery and just work my way through three amazing recipes that can then inform how I cook the rest of the year.
Mm. Is the food delivery that you just mentioned, is that sort of like a color by numbers, but in the food realm where they give you the instructions on how to prep it and then how to spice it?
Yeah, exactly. And I can't cook without improvising. It's like telling Louis Armstrong just to play the notes. Um, I'm always improvising and working through things, but because it's a great base for a meal, I know it's going to be great if I prepare it the way they say it. They tell me to, but I'm always thinking of, oh, I could add this, or wouldn't it be interesting if I altered the sauce in that way? And when I do those things, I feel like I make it my meal. But I also just love the process of cooking because, I'm a fairly high energy guy. I work very hard during the day and cook and you know often I'm like turning things into editors or whatever, and I don't know how it's going to work out. I have to wait for them to get back to me and all that. With a meal, I know exactly what's going to happen. I'll work on it for half an hour. It'll be amazing. It'll touch off, a great evening for us at home. So it's one of my go-to relaxation technique.
What are a couple of the foods that you do enjoy most?
Well, from when I was a little kid, growing up in New England, um, it was kind of it was a tradition in our family to have lobster on your birthday.
Oh,
And then I went to college in Maine and ended up living there for a while. And at one point, I actually lived in a boarding house with a lobsterman. And so he would go out and, leave the house at 6 a.m. earlier to go catch lobster all day. And he would bring home the one claw lobsters when he got home from work. And so he would go upstairs and take a shower so that he would no longer smell fishy. And I would be in the kitchen there with six one-armed lobsters thinking, what am I going to do with these? So by the time he was done cleaning up after his day lobstering, I was in the kitchen preparing a lobster feast. I would do the classic corn on the cob, steamed clams, lobster routine, make some biscuits too. But there are all sorts of great lobster casseroles you can do, lobster bisque. So I feel like I personally have been responsible for murdering probably at least 1,000 lobsters in my life, maybe more. So there's a wanted poster down in Lobster Land. My face is on it. It's like, watch out for this guy because he's trouble. Um,
oh, that's funny.
but yeah, but that would be my favorite food. But you know what? So lobster is there, but all other foods are just one tier below that, and I love them all.
In your travels, which country did you enjoy the most regarding its food?
Uh, well, here's this. You can put a big exclamation point next to this one. Here's the insider tip. There's really good food in France.
Oh my gosh, I never
Yeah.
heard that before.
Yeah, no, it's true. They have good food there. Um, my favorite restaurant in Paris is probably a lot of people's favorite restaurant. It's called Chartier, and it's a bistro that's been open for more than 100 years. And initially, the it was serving very much a lunch bucket kind of clientele, the workers of Paris. Um, and I discovered it when I was studying over there. And it's just one of these huge bustling places with a long menu. The waiters look just like they ought to in France with the white apron, the black vest, the black tie, and they also have prodigious memories so that you have a table for four. You're all telling the server what you want. They bring it to you. You eat there for a couple of hours because I just kept on ordering more and more food. Then the waiter will remember everything you ordered, write it down on the table on the paper tablecloth, and then tell you how much you owe. And one of the virtues of Chartier is it's a super cheap restaurant, so you can eat all day long and or have a very hearty meal with a couple of bottles of wine and some profiteroles for dessert, and you're only going to be out $25, and that's a great combo for me. Is cheap and good. Doesn't have to be fancy, but it needs to be good. And as my dad always used to say when he would go in a restaurant, actually you can eat atmosphere, how it looks, what the vibe is, all very important. The surly waiters, surly in just the right French way. I
Yeah.
love it. And I would go back there in a heartbeat.
It's interesting when you said that they have great memories, the wait staff, because in my experience, when I speak my order to my waiter and they're not taking it down on paper, I'm thinking to myself, don't you want to write this down? Because I'll order 10 or 20 dishes at a time, not just the lobster. So
Uh,
that was always something that scared me throughout my years speaking to waiters who believe they have these great memories.
well, I think at Chartier it's a requirement. And I don't know if I would trust any waiter anywhere else to do that. But sometimes you can go a long way in life with the attitude of surprise me. And if they
Right.
bring you the wrong dish, it might be something that you like better than the one you had ordered.
Right. Plus, when you're in a foreign country, you can't read the damn menu quite often. And well, maybe that was back in the day pre-internet.
Yeah, I mean, I spoke French when I was in. I had a command of the language when I showed up in Paris, so that was a beautiful thing. But I've also traveled in Turkey and Greece, where in the Soviet Union, Russia, where I couldn't read a thing, and that's when you kind of throw yourself on the mercy of the wait staff and saying, "Bring me what people like, and I bet I'll like it too."
Right, right. Just not the bugs.
I've gotten a few of those too, but
Have you? What do you think of that? Is it nutty?
you mean actual bugs? I thought you were talking
Yeah.
about the bugs in the food. Yeah, we published an article in Men's Health about eating insects because it is in fact a fabulous source of protein, as many people know. So we did a bug taste test before the article ran, and if you like crunch, a bug is a good answer. But also, there are a lot of insect flours that they're making now. So you don't actually have to contemplate that it's a grasshopper that you're eating.
Ah, right.
Instead, it's a powder, a high protein powder. And, you don't have to like look the insect in the eye. You can work your way around that.
That's very interesting. Now, speaking of enjoying foods with various different people and places like that, I know, do a little name dropping for us. I know you met a big movie star in India and you also met a former president. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience with them and did you eat with them?
Uh, let's see now. Yeah, well, okay. So when I was the editor of Men's Health, very big magazine, I had a ball, I would just sit around in my office and think, let's see now, who will I pitch today to be on the cover of Men's Health? So one day I was getting ready to go out for a run because it was almost required at Men's Health. You had to go exercise at lunch. And I thought, I'll just write an email to the Obama White House and see if maybe the president wants to be on the cover of Men's Health. So I typed up evidently a very convincing email, fired it off, went out for my run. By the time I came back into my office, there it was, an email from the White House press office saying, yeah, we want to do this. And then in discussion after that, they agreed that because we had a sister magazine called Women's Health, we agreed that really Michelle Obama needed to be in Women's Health and Barack needed to be in Men's Health. And so over the course of a couple of weeks in 2008, I went to the White House once to talk to the president, the other time to talk to the first lady. And, it was a stunning experience, as you can imagine, because maybe there are people who imagine themselves sitting in the Oval Office. I was not one of those people who imagined that, but just like sitting there and looking across the room, and yep, that's Barack Obama, all right. And this is the Oval Office. It was just like, how the heck did this happen? But I had to
Wow.
concentrate because I was interviewing him. Then a week later, I uh, I went back to the White House. We photographed the First Lady in one of the beautiful rooms downstairs in the White House. She and I went off to have a talk in another room, and and again, it's like for somebody as world renowned as Michelle Obama, it was striking that she would agree to sit down with me and feel safe with a guy who was known to sniff tea bags.
That's what I'm thinking right in the
Yeah.
back of my mind. You got it. I got to ask you, you get that's quite a get, both the president and the first lady. When you get to the White House and you see that the president is, maybe not the picture of health and maybe eats McDonald's and so on, how do you take that information and be able to parse it to be able to get him onto the cover of Men's Health?
Well, Barack was and is a physical specimen.
Hmm.
Um, the issue for him was still, and this was like the big news break of my interview with him, was that he was still smoking when he was in the White House.
Oh, right.
So at a certain point, the conversation diverted into how tough it is to quit smoking, what smoking did for him, the steps he was taking to get out of it. And that was the news flash that came out of my Obama conversation. But really, he made sense on the cover of Men's Health because he's obviously a basketball player. Michelle was a big food advocate when she was in the White House. I went out and took a tour of the White House garden when I was there, which was adorable. And yep, it was right next to the White House. So
Wow.
as the editor of a health magazine, he was almost the best guy in the world we could have talked to, because he was, stressful job counterbalanced by friendships and his workouts. So between those two things, I felt like we were on solid ground there. Of course, there was a vocal minority of Men's Health readers who were not at all happy that Barack was on the cover of Men's Health. So I became adept at answering their angry letters after the piece published.
What were people objecting to? Was it the smoking thing or were other aspects?
It was, there were some people who didn't think he belonged in the White House, who really
Right.
didn't believe that Hawaii was part of the United States, so that he was born there. He must be a foreign national.
Yeah.
It
Like all
was
of us.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So it was the cultural divide there, and some of our readers were thrilled to see the president of the United States on the cover of Men's Health, and some of them canceled their subscriptions. Oh well, it was fun for me.
Oh, yeah. It got you probably a lot of extra press and publicity.
Yeah. Oh no, it was great. It was a big deal. And later that year, we won a General Excellence Award at the National Magazine Awards, in part because of that Obama cover story. And I think that the judges in New York were looking at our magazine and thinking, these guys have really got it locked in. If they could invite the president of the United States to be on the magazine, and he would do it.
Wow. Peter, you could probably help me score some really great guests if you were able to get the president of the United States.
I'm not as powerful as I once was. Like you, I've got 10,000 subscribers to my Substack. I just noticed that you're one of them now. Thank you, Matthew.
Wow. Oh,
Yeah,
yes. I had to get onto that.
yeah, and I subscribe to yours too. I don't know what you're producing there, but anyway, so when I was the editor of a magazine that had 2 million subscribers, the at the time it was the preeminent men's magazine in the country, probably, possibly around the world. We were in 45 countries. It was a big deal when the editor of Men's Health would reach out to you. So I'm not under any illusion that it's my personal charm that won the president over. It's like his press people were saying, "Oh my God, this is a huge magazine. We have to do this," and the president went along with it.
Oh, don't underplay the huge charm thing. And a question, Peter. Do I have a Substack?
I don't know. It offered me the opportunity to subscribe to your Substack, so I did.
Well, that's news to me. I'm going to have to check it out. And if I do have a Substack, I better start putting something up there.
Well, it could be one of the places where this podcast could go, because
Right.
they have a format set where you can just plug your podcast into it as well. So you write a little intro. I saw that on the Apple podcast site. I saw your your descriptions of your episodes. Put one of those there as an intro. Put a link to you know the interview, and hey, baby, you're on Substack, and it's been a great thing for me. I've never had as lively or responsive an audience as I do now on Substack, so I love being there.
Oh, that sounds great. Yeah, I think the people who subscribe there are definitely more plugged in. They want to hear what people have to say.
Yeah, and you know what? We live in a troubled world now. I don't know if you have noticed that at all, Matthew.
No, I'm
But
in a bunker here.
good for you. I may come join you. The My Substack is definitely not about that, and not about the troubled world. It's more like, you have enough stuff going down in your life right now. Here's something, like my Coffee is Woke column. It's like,
Love it.
here's something that with any luck will give you a laugh, will get you out of whatever negative headspace you might be in. And, we can have a laugh together. And that's my hope. But it's also, escapism of because I do a lot of travel writing on there as well, because I do a lot of traveling. And, I also feel like, because I can offer artwork on there, that makes, art puts you in a whole different headspace. It certainly does that for me when I'm executing it. And I feel like, people go down that rabbit hole, like Alice in Wonderland, through artwork, and it invites them into a different whimsical frame of mind. And I feel like, maybe whimsy is one of the things we need a little bit more of right now.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Did you write a little bit about whimsy in one of your past
Yeah,
articles or
yeah,
pieces?
yeah. Yeah, I did thanks for noticing. I did a year in review piece in the beginning of January. It was called Whimsical A.F. And I think maybe your listeners know what the AF stand for.
Right.
It's probably it's a family show, so I'm not going to say the word.
No,
But
we're
anyway,
not in any way family show. Go
okay.
ahead and say
So
what
it's
AF stands
whimsical
for.
as fuck. That's what my my Substack was called. And I just pulled out my most whimsical moments from the past year. And you know, 24 hours after I posted it, 4,000 people had read it. And it's just like it's so cool that I have that audience now. I want to entertain them. I want to entertain myself while I'm entertaining them. It helps me get out of negative headspaces that I can get into. So all of that really helps me. I publish once a week, and with any luck, there are going to be a few laughs in there to transport you and reward you for clicking on the link.
You and I are very similar in that we like to go for the funny bone versus the jugular anytime we can.
It's so much more pleasant. I feel like we need more love and positivity in the world. And I feel like, sharing a laugh with someone it's really a deep connection and it's a beautiful thing. And there's just like there are enough like veins bulging on foreheads in the world right now that we don't need any more of that. I don't need to be in an argument with the people who read The Road to Elsewhere, which is what my Substack is called. I want to be on the same side as them and, you know, having a laugh at the world, calming down, relaxing into it, and, imagining what the possibilities are. So that's the function of my Substack. And I really appreciate that I have the opportunity to do that. And I mean, I launched it probably 3 years ago. And, for a while it was like 200, and then I had 250 readers, and then I had 300, and then I had 10,000. And it
Wow.
just took a minute for it to catch on and for people to realize I was there and doing what I do.
Do you get a lot of engagement from your readers, for your followers? Do they actually speak and make comments and ask you
Yeah,
questions?
yeah,
Yeah.
it's great. I have one guy who every time I post wants to know how that post is tied in with what I might have been eating that week. And it's just like I'm ready for him now. I'm expecting, anticipating the question. So when I did my coffee is woke piece, he asked me what my favorite things are to have with coffee. I didn't have any trouble coming up with that.
Oh, yeah. No, he sounds like somebody who'd be good on my show.
I can hook you up.
What was a story that you wrote, a bespoke love story? Velophobia?
Oh,
What was that about?
see, I intrigued you. You didn't understand it, but you wondered. So at Christmas this year, my wife and I have we don't need any more stuff, so we stopped giving each other stuff. What we want to do is trade in experiences. And ever since we moved to Colorado, I've wanted to become a mountain biker because I figured that would be the great counterpart. In the summer, I could be a mountain biker. In the winter, I'd be a skier. I guess, so I asked her for an mountain bike for Christmas. She nodded, and then I went off and bought one, so she didn't have to work too hard at it. But the bespoke love story was the love story between me and my mountain bike. Which have you ever ridden an bike or an mountain
I
bike?
don't even know what an e-bike is, so tell
Oh,
me
okay.
and my audience.
Yeah, so an e-bike is a motor-assisted bicycle. So it's
Okay.
not as strong as a motorcycle, for instance, or a Vespa or anything like that. It's more when you get your pedals going, it has a motor that can kick in and assist you. So if you're going up a steep hill, the motor kicks in to give you that little extra oomph that you need to get to the top. So I went shopping for mountain bikes. A friend had recommended, was telling me how much he loved his. I went right out, went to the store and gave it a test drive. And being on an e-bike makes you feel like a god. It multiplies your muscles in a way that doesn't cost you any exertion or exhaustion, but it also means that you can tackle stuff that you wouldn't have been up to otherwise. So,
Right.
so I've been exploring the foothills in the mountains just west of where I live in Fort Collins on my e-bike, and it just gets me in places that I couldn't have gone otherwise. Um, So that was what the bespoke love story. I was punning obviously on the spokes of a bicycle. Um, uh, and velophilia is a invented word meaning love of bicycles, and I do have a love of bicycles. I love the speed. I love the access that it gives me to beautiful places. I love the people who I bicycle with because it's a great social sport. So it's been kind of a transformation in my life since since I rode my bike home from the bike store.
Well, the e-bike sounds really good, especially for someone like me who doesn't bicycle. And, I've had an e-bike, I could get to the top of the mountain now.
You know, it's so easy. Just rent one for a day. I think, I think you'll pedal about, especially well, you live in Hawaii, right?
Yeah,
Oh, I shudder to think of the amazing places that you can go on an e-bike there. They have e-road bikes, which are, just standard for riding the shoulder of a road or on a bike path. And e-mountain bikes are capable of doing this, that, and the other, either on a trail, dirt track. They can almost go anywhere. It's like the Jeep of bicycling. So I urge you, get on an e-bike, rent one for a day, find some beautiful places to go, and I think you'll be happy. I want that for you.
oh, that sounds good. You will have that too.
Good.
You had
You know,
mentioned something. Oh, go
go
ahead.
ahead. No, I was just going
You
to say that even just talking about this reminded me that my best ever travel experience in my life happened in Hawaii.
do tell.
Which island are you on?
Oahu.
Oh, okay. So I was with my family on the Big Island, and Mauna Loa or Mauna Kea was erupting. I can't remember which one it was. But it's the one that flows down next to Hilo on
Right.
the Big Island. So we had heard that, you could go see where the lava was flowing into the ocean. We wanted to do that. So we parked near the shore where the lava was supposed to be going in. And when we got there, we were standing on a lava flow, which I'm sure was unstable, and we could have very easily ended up in the ocean, but we didn't. So we were looking out at where the lava was tracking across the black sand and falling off a cliff into the ocean. Already spectacular, right? But when
Sure.
the lava hit the ocean, it would instantly make the water boil up, so it would explode. So we had these it's like these fountains jetting into the air from where the lava was falling into the ocean. But because that was setting off windstorms, there were
Hmm.
also uh, there were water spouts, the miniature watery tornadoes um, flying around all this area where the water spouts were going up. Plus, it was a full moon night. Plus, because of all the turbulence in the ocean and in the air, it caused there were lightning strikes and thunder booming at the same time. And all this was happening at the very same moment.
Wow.
So we were just it was the most astonishing thing I've ever seen. And I've always been so grateful to the Big Island for, transporting me and my family uh, onto the edge of the most amazing view. So
It
thank you,
sounds like
Big
it.
Island. It was great.
Did you happen to capture that on video or film?
Yeah, my both of my sons are interested in film and cameras, so they did an edit of the entire trip. Lots of amazing, beautiful Hawaii experiences, including the best ever day at the Black Sand Beach when we were
Wow.
tracking those lava flows.
Wow. That sounds fantastic. It really does. Peter, I want to get your opinions on, one of the biggest topics that's going on right now, and that's AI. And how do you see that affecting our future? How do you see that affecting your career?
Well, I mean, as the saying goes, in the long run, we're all dead. So that's how it's going to affect us. Um, but I have been very interested in AI and wary of it too, obviously, because I'm a writer and an artist. There are commands I can type into Chat GPT and get any image I want to, or
Right.
get any, 5 paragraph story I want to. But
Hmm.
for me, I actually think it's an advantage because the stuff I do is just weird and quirky. And that holds true for my writing. It's very me. And the artwork I do, I can't even believe I do it. So I don't think a computer could do it for me. Um, but I'm thinking that there's going to be one of the things that's a little disappointing about AI, not a little, it's a lot disappointing, is that there's a certain genericness to it because it's giving you the average piece of information as opposed to anything that's augmented by human imagination or sense of humor. So, if you want to, instructions on how to make a pancake, no problem. Type that into type that prompt in and you'll get a perfectly fine pancake out of it. But if you want something that's going to make you laugh, that's going to thrill you, that's going to make you cry, that's going to explain the world to you in a way that you never saw it before, if you want, beautiful artwork rather than canned artwork, you can't get Vincent van Gogh out of AI. It needs to be Vincent to do it for you. And
Right.
I feel like in a certain way, if you have something that is taking over the creative process and putting it through a computer, it's going to make it generic and kind of boring, as opposed to what a talented writer and artist can do for you. And I think it's gonna that contrast. I want the boring stuff out there because people, I hope, will look at mine and say, yeah, a human did that. And a human is always going to do it different and with any luck better than the computer ever could. But I'm looking into it too. I sat down with a friend of mine who's an AI, becoming an AI expert, and one of the things that he recommended to me was that because I do excerpts from my memoir in my Substack, he was saying, you could get AI to mimic your voice and read those for you, and then you'd have like automatic podcasts. So I sat down, I read it was a paragraph of text into I think it was called the Descript app,
Uh,
and it's the app thought about it for a little bit. Then I downloaded a manuscript into it, and I'll be damned if 15 seconds later I hit play and there was my voice reading my memoir, and I didn't do it. So I played it for my wife later, and she thought it was me until the AI voice got to a French word. And I'll tell you, AI's French pronunciation is terrible, and I'm also grateful for that.
terrible. Um,
Terrible. Yes.
terrible. Yeah, it's interesting that the AI can do that if you can voice train it. I heard that 11 Labs was one of the leading AI companies that's offering that.
Yeah. You know what I'm hoping I can do, and I haven't done it yet, so who knows? But I've got this memoir written, and I've probably published 60 excerpts on my Substack from it. If I can get the AI to read those and record those excerpts for me, I also have drawings that go with them, sometimes with
Well,
time lapses associated. So my plan is on YouTube to launch my YouTube channel uh, with AI reading my text and my time lapse drawings incorporated with it. And I think those will be pretty delicious little 2-minute squibs for people to read. And it's going to help me publish my memoir one day, I hope. And it also will just be really fun and eye-opening to work on it.
yeah, the AI can absolutely make creative artists better because of what's available, right?
Yeah, and what I want to do is to make sure that it's authentically me, but get the AI assist as opposed to just like offloading all the work to AI. And it would be generic and boring if I did that, and I'm not going to let it happen.
Right. Like, here, do this for me. You don't want that.
No.
Now, you mentioned your moving images and so on. I need you to answer a long-standing question. Is it GIF or GIF?
The correct answer to that question is yes.
Okay, right,
It's both,
right. I
depending
had
on who you
gathered
are.
that.
Yeah.
Did you have a thing with Taylor Swift at some point?
Okay. Where did that come up? All right. Yes, I did.
Okay, I knew it.
Yeah. This would have been maybe 15 years ago now, but I read a review of Taylor's second album, which I think was just called Taylor Swift. I read a review of it in the New Yorker, and like New Yorker, pretty highfalutin. I was thinking, why are they paying attention to this 18-year-old girl? Um, but I thought, okay, this reviewer thought it was important, so I'll give it a listen. And for about 5 years there, I was just lost in Taylor Swift land. Um, Mostly her old stuff before she went super pop and became the performer that she is now. But when I listened to those early albums, I became a 16-year-old girl in high school, being rejected by my friends and falling in love with that boy and sitting on the bleachers and hoping he'll notice me, all that stuff. I mean, and I'll admit, it's creepy that an older man was so fixated on 16-year-old Taylor. But there was nothing untoward or prurient about it. It was really that I appreciate her as a musician and as a writer. And I love the world that she brought me into with her songs. Having just raised a couple of teenagers myself on the boy side, I really felt like I knew the world that she was talking about. And hey, all of us have been through middle school and high school, so we know what's going on there. I just felt super sympathetic with her. So then, fast forward a couple of years ago, it was my birthday. My wife and I were in Denver. And on my birthday in the afternoon, we went to see the concert movie. And I just loved every minute of it. It was just like, let it wash over me, the full Taylor effect. I think she's amazing. I still think she is. And, that song, I think it's off of the Red album, 22. When I listen to her song 22, I feel like I'm 22. And I
Oh,
think
wow.
part of the point. Also, whenever we get off a plane, when we're visiting our son in Brooklyn, I always make sure that "Welcome to New York" is the first song I hear when the plane touches down.
Do your friends give you a little bit of heck for being a Taylor Swift fan?
Yeah, they all make fun of me. My wife leads the way.
Uh-huh.
I don't think she feels jealous of Taylor because I've been able to convince her. Again, okay, yes, she's a beautiful woman, but that's not why I love Taylor. It's because I feel like her songs have a narrative that a lot of others don't. And you can't. I couldn't help but get caught up in the phenomenon of Taylor, feeling like I was with her, right from the start because I was, probably came in right at the beginning of the second album. I personally was offended when Kanye West pushed her off the stage at the Grammys. So I've been through all that stuff with her, and I feel like it's been an important cultural happening for the last 15 years for me. And I'm not the only one, obviously.
Back early on when you were listening to her, were you experiencing body dysmorphia as well?
No, I'm quite happy in my male body. No dysmorphia. I don't wish I was Taylor Swift, but I do like having her come in through my headphones.
Oh, yeah. I'm going to have to plug in a little bit more on the musical side of that. Tell us about the 5 stages of neck pain.
Yeah, gosh. You dove into my Substack oeuvre. I produce a lot there, so it's hard for me to even remember what some of the joking I did about it was. But
Yeah.
yeah, when I became a big deal editor, sitting at a desk working at a computer all day long, you know, my neck started really bugging me, and it's only been about 25 years that my neck has been hurting. So
Just 25 years.
yeah, only 25 years.
Uh-huh.
Seems clear that I'm not going to do anything about it, except when we moved to Colorado, I started doing yoga 3 days a week. And there are a lot of neck looseners that are in there. So between CBD rubs, which do in fact work for me
Mm.
anyway, and yoga and other strengthening exercises I do, it's like neck pain is a sign of a weak neck, and it's also a sign of poor posture. So um, uh, I made fun of all that in my Substack in a series of cartoons. But I take it pretty seriously and I work hard on it. And after we're done talking, I'm gonna go get a workout in um, to help my back, to help my neck. It's like the expression to a hammer, everything looks like a nail. To
Yep.
a former Men's Health editor, uh, every problem looks like a reason to institute a new workout. So I'm
Right.
working hard at it. And, I said my neck's been hurting for 25 years, but not as much as it used to. And that
Mm.
feels good.
So it's
It is, it's like all you need to do is find the right therapy. and you can help with things like that. And
Yeah.
that's one of the things I was clued into at Men's Health is, an editor who I worked with there used to say, I don't have personal problems, I have story ideas. That's very much how we ran the magazine. And I solved any number of my personal problems by assigning articles or writing articles about them for Men's Health.
Wow. So tell people where we can all take a look at your work, your cartoons, your writings, your weird observations, and all the delicious things that you're up to.
Yeah, it's petermoore.substack.com. And everything that I do, my Colorado Sun columns, my NPR commentaries and animations, some of the freelance work that I do, usually it will end up eventually on my Substack. So it's petermoore.substack.com. Not that hard, nothing weird about my name, Moore. So I would love it if your 11 readers like hopped on there and maybe 3 of them would subscribe. They
Do
would
it,
follow
guys.
your example, Matthew.
Oh, exactly. Take it from me. This guy's good. One of my cousins' last name is Moore as well. So I can
The
see
fifth,
there's a connection here.
yeah, the fifth most common surname in the U.S., and there
Is,
were any
is
number of
that right?
enslaved people who ended up with the last name Moore too. So I have some black brothers and sisters who also share my name.
Wow, I did not know that at all. The fifth most popular name?
Yeah, fifth most common surname
Common
in the
surname.
U.S. And I actually do. I have time for one more story.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I want to ask you about something else after that.
Okay. So I was in London doing a profile of Jennifer Beals. Do you remember the Flashdance? Uh,
I cooked for the producer of that movie. I
all
was his
right.
private chef.
Okay. Well, hats off to you. There it was on the set in London, and Jennifer walked over to meet me, and I could see when she stuck out her hand, but she looked like to shake my hand and say hello, but she looked a little disappointed, and I was like, what? You already don't like me? And she said, no, it's just that my best friend in high school was named Peter Moore, and I thought you might be him, but you're not.
Oh, well, we're a little bit of a letdown there.
But she was very nice otherwise. And so I met her on the set in London. Then I traveled to LA to interview her at the Chateau Marmont, which is where John Belushi died. And we had a great chat there. So we kind of got over the whole "you're not that Peter Moore" thing.
Oh, wow. What I wanted to ask you about was 'twas the night of Thanksgiving and the carbon monoxide detector went beep, beep, beep.
Oh my
Tell us
goodness.
about that story.
Yeah, that was the creepiest thing. And, if that evening had worked out a little bit differently, I wouldn't be here talking to you. I'd be, 6 feet under. So middle of the night, we were cat sitting for my son who lives in Denver, because he and his girlfriend were off on an exotic vacation. And, the dang carbon monoxide detector kept on beep, beep, beeping. And I was like, oh, how annoying is this that, um, they seem like they malfunction a lot, carbon monoxide detectors. Maybe I'm wrong about that. But so I went to the carbon monoxide detector. I took it off the wall. I took the batteries out and put them back in. All was quiet. And I thought, okay, maybe resetting it is going to work okay. Went back into bed, tried to fall asleep, and it started beeping again. So then it's like, okay, maybe we do have a problem here. Right when that happened, a fire truck pulled up in front of my son's apartment building. And like all of a sudden, oh, this is starting to get serious now. So I put on some clothes, ran downstairs, talked to the fire department, and they said somebody was walking by on the street. This is 1:30 a.m. Somebody was walking by on the street, heard an alarm coming from the downstairs apartment below where my son and his girlfriend lived, and that was another carbon monoxide detector that was screaming into the night. And this good Samaritan called 911 and said, I think there's a problem here. So pretty soon they're like my son's apartment was crawling with guys from the fire department. They were getting noticeable readings of carbon monoxide in the upstairs apartment. Then we figured out how to get into the downstairs apartment. No one was home there, thank goodness. And they took out their carbon monoxide detectors, the official, fire department ones, and it was a lethal toxic level of carbon monoxide downstairs. And that's what was kind of escaping up into the apartment where my wife and I were sleeping. So they were able to shut down the furnace, put fans in the windows, the carbon monoxide went away. We lived to tell the tale. But I also recounted that on my Substack, and it was one of the most popular columns I ever did because I think people identified with that threat and also thinking that their favorite Substack guy might have died from carbon monoxide poisoning. They don't want to do that themselves.
I didn't realize that carbon monoxide was such a situation that could make you that unalive that quickly.
Yeah, it's a odorless, colorless gas. It displaces the oxygen in your brain when you breathe it, and that'll kill you in 15 minutes. And
That'll do it.
you read about it. I mean, I'm cued into it now because it almost happened to me. But every time people turn on their heaters, you don't have to worry about this in Hawaii. But every time people in the northern tier of the country of the U.S. turn on their heaters, there'll be 4 or 5 families that have a carbon monoxide leak and will die, all 5 of them overnight. It's just terrifying. And believe me, we've got 5 very lively carbon monoxide detectors in our house right now.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's good to know. Absolutely. When I first read the title of the story, I thought this had something to do with what was cooking in the oven related to Thanksgiving.
Well, we wouldn't have made it to Thanksgiving the next day
Right.
had we died that night. I'm very grateful we didn't.
Oh,
Another
good,
thing to
good.
be thankful for, right? I'm not dead.
Yeah. Any bold predictions for the rest of this year? Now, if we were taping next week instead of right now, I could have asked that question about the Super Bowl and you would have sounded like a genius. Do you have any bold predictions for what's going on?
I'm not much of a predictor. I would tell you that given who I am and where I am politically, I'm, kind of in shock right now. But what I'm trying to figure out, and I think this is true for everybody in the world, is like, how do we hone our sights in on what's really important to us and on the people that are important to us and the community around us that's important? And, so much of what's produced in official Washington is just blather and noise. And the pendulum swings in one direction, then it swings in the other. And it's hard to see where the progress comes in any of that. And it's helping me to focus on, well, what are the things that I can personally affect myself? And a lot of that for me is, where can I find delight in the world? How can I reach out to people who matter to me? How can I make new friends? How can I have new experiences? So I can predict that for myself this year coming up, it's going to be a rededication to um, the people, things, places that are most important to me. And I'm going to concentrate on them. And with any luck, we'll come out of this dark hole in the ground and the light will shine again. That's my hope.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are good words. I wanted to ask you lastly about Road to Elsewhere. And is that name's just like a play on Road to Nowhere, which was a big song back in the day, but was it Talking Heads or something?
Yeah, no, it actually, I came across I think I was reading an interview with Susan Sontag, big brain intellectual lady, and the Road to Elsewhere. She was talking about the passages of her life, and something happened to her, which led her on the road to elsewhere, meaning the next big thing. And I knew that my Substack was going to have a lot of travel content, but also was going to be kind of focused on looking ahead and where I wanted to be and where I wanted the world to be, or making fun of it if it wasn't there already. So the road to elsewhere, that phrase stuck in my mind. And then I found that if I use the numeral 2 and put it between road and elsewhere, that I could get all the social media hookups that I needed on X and Instagram and Facebook. Nobody else had ever thought of coming up with the road to elsewhere, and I did. So that it's kind of my gnome to travel now.
I love the whole numeral in the title. You kids, what will you think of next?
Yeah, me and Prince were right there with the 2.
Exactly. The guy formerly known as Peter Moore, huh?
Yeah, now he's the guy known as Road to Elsewhere. Exactly,
Well,
that's me.
that's great. Peter, I'm so glad that you joined me here on 50 Tastes of Gray. I hope you had a nice time today.
Oh, yeah, I had a great time. Thanks for leading me through it all.
You bet. I will say aloha to you now.
Aloha.